Jake is here.
Don't tell me to come down.
Okay.
So.
You can sit in that chair right over there in that corner.
Perfect.
It's the dunce's chair, Jake.
That's right.
Yeah.
I used to spend a lot of time in the corner.
The treasurer's office used to be the principal's office.
What do
When
I
I was
do?
a student here.
Oh, is that
And I
right?
spent a lot of time in that
Well,
office.
you were a student here?
My mother was my kindergarten teacher. It was very
Is
good.
that right?
Yeah.
Very nice.
I gotta make sure that I can chat in the box.
It's back when we used to be able to walk to school, like
No.
just down the street.
Yeah. Oh, that was really convenient for you.
Yeah, we were right up.
Yeah.
Just walk over here every day.
When we were in service, my wife taught on the local base and the kids could go to school with her. At the end of school,
Yeah,
came to her classroom. It was perfect.
it's not like that anymore.
No,
Everyone's a commuter nowadays.
yeah.
We're almost there. We actually are live, but I've gotta get to a different window so that I can open up the public comment part.
And your mother's still in St. Joe?
My mom?
Yes.
Yeah, she moved over to the Harbor Shores development. She just built a house
Oh,
over there.
yeah? Oh, okay.
So she sold this one last summer, moved over there.
Was it emotionally challenging to sell this house?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's in the family for 40 years, but it's hard to turn down the price that was offered, so.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Plus, it's 4,000 square foot house for one,
Yeah,
72-year-old woman.
yeah.
It's too much.
Hey, good morning. We're at the Berrien County Finance Committee for the Board of Commissioners. It is June 25th. Staff present in the room is Stephanie Carlson, Annette Christie, Mike Henry, Ben Reynolds, Jake Lideker, and Dan Fetty. And we're going to start out with the roll call from Stephanie.
Commissioner Yarborough,
Present.
Commissioner Harrison,
Here.
Commissioner Hinkleman,
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Great,
Thank
and
you for all being here.
We're going to move on to the bid opening. It's 2020-057, and Ben is going to do that bid opening for you.
Good morning. We have, the bid was sent to 4 bidders, 3 responded. The first opening is from Kaling Construction.
Excuse me, then will you go slower and speak more? This is kind of muffled with the mask. I don't, I want you to be okay, but thank you. Go ahead.
All right, this was sent to 4 bidders, 3 responded. The first one on opening is from Kaling Construction. Okay, the total bid is $110,332. 110332. The next bid is from Michigan Paving and Materials. This bid is for $130,000. 130000.
Thank you.
And the last bid is for Reith Riley. This bid is for $101,330. 101330. And Walsh and Kelly did not bid.
Okay. I would like to say something. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I asked this, but we never had a chance to meet or talk about it. When those bids went out, there is a form that we fill out and send. I'm sorry, was filled out by the department. And our committee signed it, that we agreed to send the bid out. And I asked that we start, when we're opening bids now, that we have that original bid sheet with it, that each of our committee members will have a copy of it, so that we can see that they're coming in or that it's what we asked about. And then the motion that we're going to read is the one that if it's over $5,000, then it must go back to the to the administrator to approve it. And so, Mr. Henry, I look forward to us talking and being able to keep all this smooth, because we've had some really, not good things happen. And so this is the only way that I can say it. So I ask that the next time we have a bid that we open, that we have the original bid sheet request with it, so we can just look and know that it's apples to apples.
Yes.
So, maybe you're asking then for the, so when you get the bid tally sheets that you're filling out right now, you're asking that the bid request form to come to you with that as well?
Yes,
Is that correct? Okay.
yes. Any other questions? And you all can refine it, but what my point is that we'd be able to look and see that it is the same thing that we asked for, because we don't remember. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you ready for a motion, Madam Chairman?
Yes, please.
I, Commissioner Harrison, move that we refer the bids to the department with the approval to move forward with the lowest bidder if they meet specifications and requirements. However, recognizing that the best qualified bid can move forward. In addition, we authorize the county administrator to execute the subsequent contract associated with this bid and any contract modifications up to $5,000.
May I have a support?
Or
And who was that?
John Hinkleman?
Thank you, John. Any further questions? Stephanie, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Yarborough,
I must abstain. My son works for Kalen.
Commissioner Harrison,
Yes.
Commissioner Hinkleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. It was just one bid?
Yeah, we just had the one for today.
Thank you. Then we
Madam
can-
Chair,
Yes,
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Scott.
yes.
I would like to see whether or not we could get a finance meeting put together to discuss the language of sending these bids back to the road department, because there was talk about this with the Union Pier project, that the motion could be changed, or interest in changing the motion due to the fact that if the road department does not go with the lowest bid, that they must or shall come back to finance with a reason why. And I think that would help a lot in this situation for us to try and understand it.
Okay.
But that's just my 2 cents.
Let's see if we can have, just like one of the days when we only have our board meeting at 10:30, if at
Right.
9:30, we could have a finance committee on that same Thursday. And I would ask you, I don't know how to call you. I'm going to say Administrator Henry, to help us get that together and have the right people there so we can work on this motion. We'd like very much for it to run smooth.
Yes, I think I understand what you need, and so the next finance committee meeting, we'll try to get that squared away
Okay,
so that we can close the loop and ensure that we have the best qualified contractor for the various projects. So we'll try to do that.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Our next item is Community Development Director. I thank you for being here, Community Director. I know what this is, and I thought we need to talk about it again because we may have members or committee members that did not know what it was. And so as I talked to Annette, she said, we'll have Dan Fetty come in. And so would you take it, explain to us what this is?
Sure. The first resolution that we're looking at is F2006283, and that is the annual Cornerstone Alliance operating contract. And I know I talked to Ezra sometime last week about this a little bit, but for background information for the commissioners that may not have been here a number of years ago, we reorganized the Economic Development Corporation, I believe, in 2014. At which point we made Cornerstone, Connexus, and some of our other local partners permanent members of the Economic Development Corporation. The idea was to provide greater coordination of activities in community-wide economic development. Part of that reorganization was that the county decided that it was no longer going to be involved in what we called retail economic development. That is, we were going to step back from the front line and deal with kind of back office support through our EDC, through our Brownfield Authority, through our Land Bank Authority, our Board of Public Works, basically using our legislative powers and legal powers to support economic development projects. In return, Cornerstone would accept the role of kind of being the retail side of that process. They would go meet with the businesses, they would meet with the site selectors, the business recruiters, all of the national marketing firms and so forth, and they would serve as kind of like the face of economic development. Once a project was identified, it would be sent back to us here at the county, where we would kind of do the nuts and bolts work on the tax abatements, the financing mechanisms, the infrastructure needs and so forth, because that's more or less where our ability is best utilized. Yeah. So in keeping with that, we started the process of signing a contract annually with Cornerstone to provide them $20,000 of operating assistance that they could use for outward marketing purposes throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout the region. And I think it's been a relatively successful arrangement. What it did is it prevented us from falling into the problems we had previously, where we were essentially competing against each other to provide economic development services. That was creating confusion in the business community. It was creating confusion in the site selector community because no one knew exactly who was in charge or who to call. The idea was instead, let's streamline this thing, stop duplicating our services, and each focus on the services that we're best at providing in a kind of a team approach. And I think it's been pretty successful. I talked with Rob Cleveland last week, and I said, just give me some basic numbers of what's gone on since we've engaged in this process. And I can tell you, this covers the years of 2017 through 2019. They've had 20 expansion projects, business projects, that would include Lake Township, Hager Township, Pipestone, Village of Stevensville, Coloma, another one in Hager, City of Bridgman, Village of Stevensville, Royalton Township, St. Joe, and City of St. Joe. They've had new company locations come in Coloma Township, Hager Township, Benton Township, Benton Harbor, and their Women's Business Center has provided direct business support to new business startups in New Buffalo, Baroda, St. Joe, Benton Harbor, Sawyer, St. Joe Township, Coloma Township, Three Oaks, another one in Sawyer, St. Joe, Benton Harbor. They've also been able to create investor partnership relationships with the following municipalities: Benton Township, Orinoco, City of Benton Harbor, City of St. Joe, Berrien County, Lincoln, St. Joe Charter, New Buffalo Township, Bridgman, Lake Township, Hager Township, and Royalton Township. These are all municipal supporters or donors to Cornerstone right now.
That is so.
As we discussed in the budget hearing last fall, we were proposing to budget the $20,000 as we have consistently, with the understanding that we would review the process throughout the course of the year. Going into this year's budget season, if it looked like we were getting a little thin on money, we would, perhaps not continue the process next year. But I can tell you, my personal feeling is that it's been a very successful relationship. and it's been valuable for economic development throughout the area. The final thing I'll say about it, and I think everyone recalls about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we rushed to put together a website of information for business resources and assistance to restart after the lockdown orders were beginning to be lifted. Cornerstone was integral in making that happen. They're the ones that went out and purchased the website. They're the ones that populated it with most of the information, and they're the ones that continue to maintain it, update it, and answer questions of businesses that are contacting through that website. So it's been a very important thing in this particular crisis. At the same time, Cornerstone has made 26 grants to private businesses during this pandemic, totaling $195,000 for micro grants for operating assistance. And they've made 4 business loans, emergency loans, totaling $297,820. So this is stuff that we would not be able to do directly, but we can do it through our partnership in the EDC and supporting their activities. And I think it's been a very valuable relationship, and it's been especially valuable in the last 12 weeks as we're dealing with some extraordinary circumstances. So I would encourage that the contract be approved and that we move forward with it. And then again, we can have the discussion coming into the fall if we want to continue into 2021.
I thank you so much. And what I would just like to say, it's all over Berrien County, the things that they're doing, and that's a blessing. And that's what we're about, being Berrien County. You know, Berrien County is to spread out all over the community. And what I think about is a group that we were working with, and I wrote it down, it was the Southwest Michigan First. That is included, and it's still those people when we would meet. Niles and Coloma and Harbor Country and Berrien County and who? St. Joe?
Connexus is part of that as well. And yes, maybe that's true. Southwest Michigan First is the regional conduit that the state funnels business recruiting projects through. So everything comes into the MEDC. They funnel it into Southwest Michigan First. The county has a position on that board.
Okay.
That part of what we pay Cornerstone to do is represent the county's interest on that board, so that we get our fair share of these leads, you might call them. And Rob and I meet to discuss what we want our collective response to be and how we want to be collectively represented on that board.
All right. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask our committee members, do you have any questions?
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Dan, I have a couple of questions. Number one, what is this website you were talking about for the collaboration?
That's the Berrien Reopen website that we presented to you a number of weeks ago that provided all of the most up-to-date information on business reopenings.
Okay. That was the first one. My second is a comment. I was totally against spending $20,000 because I did not understand, and I've never really kind of been shown what Cornerstone did for us. And I placed a call to Dan Fetty, and he called me back, and we had a nice, about a half-hour long conversation. I now understand everything, and I'm going to support this. But like you said, Dan, this was in this year's budget, but depending on how our COVID is and our revenue sharing and how things are going, it may not be in next year. So we have to also have a secondary plan or a plan B, and I'm sure you're already working on something on that. So it's just a comment that I had.
Well, I appreciate that. The one thing I would remind the commissioners too is this is not, this doesn't come out of the general fund. The Economic Development Corporation has a budget, the money of which is earned through other economic development projects. So we have interest earnings, we have administrative fee earnings on projects that are managed via that fund. What we do with that fund historically is use those earnings to support further economic development actions, and that's where this money comes from. Now, the fund right now is doing pretty well, but of course that can change quickly depending on the success or failure of projects that we work on. So for the time being, the $20,000 is, it's not good. It's not gonna break the bank of that fund, but we'll have to see where we are in September to see if it's viable moving forward.
Thank you.
Hold on, Madam Chair.
Yes.
One other redirect on that, on the website. You said that's Berrien reopened.
Yeah.
I thought that whatever happened to southwestmichigan.org?
The southwestmichigan.org website, that's actually something that we didn't complete that process, but that is something that we want to get done this year. And the idea of the southwestmichigan.org website was kind of a one-stop shop website where all of our economic development partners would be able to list their specific programs, projects, and so forth. Kind of a consolidated web service. And that is something that we're continuing to put in place, but we have not completed that yet.
Will that be, do you believe that'll be done before the end of this year?
I think it's possible to get that done. A lot of it depends on how well we can coordinate, because it's been quite difficult to get like large meetings set up to do this kind of stuff. But yeah, we're gonna try to get this done before the end of the year.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions, commissioners? So do you have any other questions of Dan Fetty? Are we ready for the motion? I'm sorry, the resolution to come to the floor? Do we need to make a motion for it, Annette?
You do not need to make a motion.
Okay. All right, so thank you so much.
Sure.
Dan, appreciate it. I lost my agenda. What are we doing now?
So Dan does have two other
Yeah.
resolutions about Berrien,
Oh,
bus
yes.
that we want to go over with you.
Presentation. And I saw Evan Evan, are you with us? Is that
I
a new-
am.
Is
Can
that
you
a
hear
new, is that a new dog that you had? to go
Oh, I'm
get?
sorry. Could you hear him?
No, I saw you go get him.
Oh no. Well, he's an old dog, but he's
Oh.
he's having a little trouble adjusting. But I think we got him under control.
It's all right. He can bark. Please, go ahead, please, with the. resolution.
Okay. We have two resolutions related to Berrien Bus, and this is a part of the process of trying to internalize the operations of Berrien Bus and get that done by July 1st, next week. The first resolution, F2006286, Buchanan Transit Operating Agreement. We sent, Evan sent a memo out to everyone explaining what this was about, but to reiterate, Berrien County has provided the operations for Buchanan Dial-A-Ride for quite a few years now. We did so, however, through our contract with TMI.
Yeah.
With TMI out of the picture, we have to revise that contract, and I should back up and say that the city of Buchanan has requested that the county continue to provide operating services for Dial-A-Ride. And to do so, we have to revise the contract, removing any reference to TMI and stating that the county will directly provide the operation assistance to Buchanan. And that's what this contract is about. We did those revisions. Judge Duane has looked through it. He's approved it as to its form. City of Buchanan also approved the contract at their meeting Tuesday night, conditioned on our approval. But this is just a revision of the existing contract that carries us through the end of this year and allows us to continue to provide the operations through Buchanan Dial-A-Ride.
Any
Fairly
questions?
straightforward. Okay.
No.
The question that I want to ask, are we taking TMI's place? Are we becoming that, whatever it is, you said they buy gas, they do all kinds of stuff, schedule?
Yes, that's precisely what we're doing. We are hiring temporary employees to run the buses, to dispatch the buses, to help in the management of the bus operations. We're purchasing the gas, we're providing the utilities.
All right.
We had to take over all of those responsibilities and bring them into the Berrien Bus Special Fund. And we are about 90% of the way there. We still have a few more things we have to do before we can kind of flip the switch next week. But this is one of those things we need done.
Did TMI have other bus companies that they worked with?
Yes,
No,
they
I'm
were.
just
TMI,
Buchanan.
yeah, TMI was the operator, the third-party contract operator for Buchanan as well. But we We were managing that whole process.
Right. So we have how many customers? Buchanan, Berrien Bus, and
That's
Niles,
it.
or not?
No, Niles runs their own system internally.
Okay. And Twin City area, Takata runs their own.
Runs its own.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's totally independent.
Yeah, because I know a little bit, a lot about a little bit, but I wanted to understand how we becoming the management company. And so then does Buchanan, they do probably already, they pay us a fee?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
As stated in the contract, they pay us a fee, a management fee, and an operating fee.
Thank you. I just want to
Yep.
understand. Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner?
No.
Evan, you have anything, any input you want to say?
Dan pretty much covered everything. I would just pass along a thanks from the Buchanan City Council as well as from MDOT that we've received over the last couple of weeks for Berrien County, stepping up and being able to pull this off in such a quick amount of time and helping our friends in Buchanan out and hopefully not missing a single day of service.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then we will, this is on the agenda for today.
Yes.
Yes.
Another one. Mhm.
Okay. Okay, the last resolution that we have for you today is F2006289, and this is to amend the prior resolution authorizing the creation of new transit employment classifications and authorizing Berrien County to begin the takeover of Berrien Bus, or the internal operations of Berrien Bus. June 4th, I think it was, you passed resolution F2006271. That was the resolution that authorized me and Evan and the county administrator to start the process of internalizing this. It also created the following employment classifications: the driver position, the dispatcher position, and the maintenance technician position. As we got into this process a little further, we realized, Evan will be providing the general operations management for this system, but we're concerned about a lack of redundancy and contingency planning in the event that someone gets sick or hit by a bus. And it turns out that's probably a little more necessary than we thought, because we've had employees in our own department, for example, that are on mandatory stay at home because of exposure to COVID. So our concern was not having any redundancy in that operations manager position. So what Evan and I are requesting is that we create one additional employment classification, that is office manager.
Yes.
You have the attached job description, but it's kind of a jack of all trades position that we're looking for, someone who has some familiarity with the finance side of it, someone who has some familiarity with the dispatching side, the mechanics side, and so forth. But we think it's necessary to have this position available, and we hope to bring someone into that where they can serve on a temporary or part-time basis and fill in as needed in the event that Evan is not going to be down there full-time. The other reason, it's not just the redundancy that I'm concerned about. The other reason is we need Evan to be working on the long-range plan for Berrien Bus and what we're going to do come January 1st of next year. And I'm concerned about having him down in the Berrien Bus garage as an operations guy, 5-6 days a week for the next 5 months, and not here working on long-range planning. So having this office manager down there will also help provide or free up some time for Evan to do the work that he's really supposed to be doing for us. We don't have a selected candidate for this or anyone in mind, but we'd like to post it, see what kind of, we'd like the position created, obviously, and then post it and see what kind of applications we get and whether or not we have a viable candidate who can help fill in down there.
Any questions? Do you think there's someone within the system already, or you just don't know?
Well, we were hoping so, Mamie. We thought we had a candidate from the existing TMI employment pool, but it appears that candidate is going to accept another job elsewhere. So we don't have anyone right now that we can slide into this position, but we will post it, see what we get, and with any hope, we'll get some qualified individual who can help fill in down there.
Okay.
For the time being, though, it's going to be Evan's job.
And what do we need to do? Is this a motion we make, or The job.
Well, this is the resolution. What we're asking for is the resolution to be passed, and it modifies the prior one and creates this additional position as office manager.
Okay, it's on the agenda today.
It is.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, Madam
Yes.
Chair, Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Dan,
Yeah.
office manager, well, first of all, let's go backwards. Driver, dispatcher, and maintenance technician were all temps,
Yeah.
correct? Is the office
That's right.
manager job a temp also?
Yes, it is.
All right,
Every employee we intend to bring on between now and the end of the year will be a temporary employee. And that gets back to what I was talking about, is freeing up some time for Evan, because we have to put a plan in place by the beginning of next year on what we're gonna do with our employment complement, because right now we're working solely with temps.
okay. And the next question I have, you haven't really gotten into because it's not part of this resolution, but Evan wrote us a letter stating the fact now that when we originally were told this, we were told that this was going to be a scaled down operation of Berrien bus. And it now looks as though we're going to a full-time operation of 11 drivers and a full complement, just like TMI had. And I was wondering whether or not, if that was run by the BCAT team prior to his letter going out. And the other thing is, if that's the case, how did you guys miss this?
We didn't miss anything. What happened was
we're going to a full bore all the way.
Well, no, I think we need to clarify that. We're recommending bringing on other additional drivers. They may not be driving at all. They may not get any hours, but we want layers of drivers and redundancy in the event that we see our operating hours increase. We were originally estimating 5 drivers based on what we were seeing, which was a very, very low demand for operations. What we're seeing now is the possibility that throughout the summer, the demand may start rising faster than what we thought a month ago. And that's because of potential contracts that we may have with RISA, school and summer programs for children and so forth. If those hours begin to increase, we would like to have the employment base set so that we can call people into work as needed. One thing to remember here is this is all hourly, so we are only paying the hours that the employees are called into work. But the biggest concern we had, Ezra, is if we have 5 drivers and suddenly we see a surge in demand in July and August, then we'd be scrambling to locate additional drivers. Instead, we want to bring them on and be able to use them flexibly as we need to.
Okay, I just didn't understand because I was not part of the 3 commissioners. I think Curran and Harrison and Terry Freeling on the BCAT, and I haven't heard anything about this until that letter that came yesterday. I tried to print all of this stuff. I was able to get my bid sheet printed for the asphalt, and then all of a sudden my printer just decided it wasn't going to print anymore. So I'm just going back on recollecting because I'm on Zoom and I can't bring up my email to see exactly what was there. I'm just going from memory. So thank you.
Ezra,
The point I really want to emphasize is that we are still anticipating very diminished demand for bus services right now. We're also anticipating that demand could increase over time, and we want to be prepared for it in advance if that happens. But we're not talking about an operation nearly the size of what it was in February, even early March. We're still very low in our hours.
Okay, I didn't understand. That's why I asked the question. Thank you.
I think that was a good question, Ezra, and it's going to stay rather fluid based on the COVID and the psychology of the region, how it affects public transportation. So this seems to be the best way to give them the flexibility to adjust based on demand and other contracts that might come in. And so this seems to be about the best possible approach we could find.
All right, thank you.
Could I add something?
Yes.
So I think it's worth noting 3 of these 11 drivers are normally assigned to Buchanan. So they will drive the Buchanan buses. We also were expecting to bring on a one dispatcher that's been with us a long time, and due to the lack of health benefits, she has moved on. And so one of those drivers that's listed is going to actually serve as a dispatcher. She does both. The other thing I would just like to add is that, you know, in reaching out and screening these employees and talking to them, a number of them, since they have either been on unemployment or underemployment or laid off by TMI, they have found other part-time jobs. Some of them have started collecting Social Security. So it's not like we thought the service was going to need 6 drivers and now we think the service is going to need 11 drivers.
Yeah.
It's more along the lines of we think we need 11 people to fill in for what would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 6, 7, 8 full-time equivalent drivers. And like Dan mentioned, unless they are called into work and on the clock, it's not, you know, an added expense.
Thank you. The preparation is necessary. And my hope had been that every summer we build up to, you know, the festivals or the fairs or the towns realizing they needed transportation all weekend or whatever. But then again, the COVID has it where you can only do a few people, doesn't it? That distance, does that make it difficult for people to be moved in the buses?
Yeah, I mean, there's no real clear-cut directive on how many people you can have on the bus or should have on the bus. I mean, we're taking all the precautions we can, you know, but as far as demand, I've received calls almost every day this week from folks, whether it's Berrien RISA or other programs or even our own parks department. You know, I think folks are gearing up and ready to get back out. And so with, you know, the timing of the governor's order being lifted kind of between when we first discussed this and now, you know, I think we're expecting demand to be higher quicker than maybe we, you know, could have anticipated with, you know, when we were working through all this, we were right in the middle of lockdown.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions?
Sure.
Any other things you want to tell us? So
That's all we had on the agenda for you today. I'll be available at the commissioners meeting if there are any questions on any of these resolutions.
All right. Thank you.
Mike, did you want to talk at all with them about security issues and visitor screening processes?
I can. As you, I think, are aware, the administration center here is open to the public, and so as you come into the main entrance, we do have, or we did have plans, and we executed that plan to have an employee monitor folks coming in, take temperature, ensure they're wearing a mask, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that individual discovered yesterday she had a temperature, so sent her home, and the sheriff, we worked with the sheriff and undersheriff, and so a sheriff's reserve deputy is monitoring the front primary entrance as we speak, and we'll do that through close of business Friday. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue that with the sheriff, and he's looking at what kind of resources he has available internally, specifically as it refers to reserve deputies. If that does not work, then I'd recommend we go with a contractor to have that individual or one of his people monitor this building so that we can do the appropriate checks that need to be done. And the reason for that is, you know, we're just not very deep in this environment. None of us know with certainty how long this is going to continue, the requirement to do all these checks. So we're working that. We don't have a real good answer for you at this point. That's kind of where we are.
Okay. Thank you.
You have any additions that?
The only thing I would add is that I have talked to, everyone's familiar with, I think, Roger Lang's security firm. Roger would be capable, if we needed it, he would be capable of providing boots on the ground here
Okay,
at a relatively reasonable hourly rate. So we'll see if that's something that we need to move forward with. And the only other thing I would add to what Mike said is, we have two principal concerns. Having full-time staff conduct security and screening could be problematic for us, especially if we see more of our employees going down, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And the other thing is we have had some difficulties with some members of the public who don't want to abide by the rules, and it would be nice to have a person out there that was trained in, you know, de-escalation and conflict resolution, as opposed to us just throwing a random employee down there and asking them to deal with this. It really is more of a skill that's suitable for a security firm or law enforcement individual. And I certainly don't want to put any of my employees in a situation where they may have a belligerent or hostile member of the public that they have to deal with no security around. So I think, you know, we'll see over the next few days how it progresses, but we may have a recommendation coming back to you to bring in a security person out there.
okay. Makes sense.
I wasn't looking at it from the security aspect. I was thinking about it from the health aspect on the people actually doing the screening. I've gone to doctor's appointments and they have a medical person there taking your temperature and everything else. So my thought is that we probably do have those people already working for the county at the health department. One of the nurses that was afraid to go to the Andrews University to check on the 10 rooms was the reason we hired Lang. And if we don't have anybody there, then those people would be available, maybe.
That's something we're looking into as well. I know they are stretched very, very thin right now at the health department, but that was one of the first questions that we started asking, is whether or not there was the possibility of that. It is a concern. I mean, considering that the individual that we had doing the screening was there for less than 2.5 days, came down with a fever, and now is out of work for the next 14 days, or until such time as tests are cleared. So, you know, to put it in, I'll tell you this, we are a little nervous around here. I have a department with only 5 people, and I have 2 employees right now that are on stay-at-home orders. So, you know, that gives you an example of if this were to get into this building and start winding its way through the staff levels, we could find ourselves shorthanded very, very quickly.
My only recommendation that I have is that Annette is not the person to be down there working on the desk. She's already doing enough. And I would not like to see that happen.
Wow.
Very good.
Just saying.
So maybe Dan could be down there, you know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anything else? Stephanie, we need to make can we make a motion for the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the minutes, please?
I, Commissioner Harrison, move approval of the minutes as presented.
And a support, please?
Support, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. Any corrections, additions, questions? All those in favor? Oh, no. Stephanie, call the roll.
Commissioner Yarborough,
Yes?
Commissioner Harrison,
Yes.
Commissioner Hinkleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Then it passes. Is there any other items, Stephanie, that we need to do?
I don't know if Annette has board appointments.
Okay. Is that on the computer in that?
Hang on just a second.
Okay, I'm not in any hurry. I'm already at home.
Yeah, Mike Henry here.
Yes,
The sheriff has submitted a request and provided us an update on patrol funding for the city of Benton Harbor. And because of some of the social challenges we've had in our communities, the sheriff's department has been sending 2 patrols into the Benton Harbor area, and as a result of that, has consumed more of their operational budget of around $50,000 per year than they anticipated that they would when they crafted the budget. So what they're asking, and this does not need to be approved today, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention, that we supplement this particular budget that handles the Benton Harbor area, an additional $50,000. And Doug James in the finance office, they've been working it, and we have sufficient funding to handle this request. So we'll be doing it in a more formal way to ensure that we complete the process from the funding perspective.
Okay.
If there are any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
The dollars come from where?
The dollars come from the operational law enforcement millage.
No,
No, I stand correct.
comes from the contingency in the general fund.
Who is that? Is that Doug James?
Yeah, sorry, he came in after the
I
meeting.
couldn't, I saw arm.
Morning.
Yeah, let's talk about it a minute. I know in previous years, this again is not new. It's probably been going on for many years. And so is there a date? It covers the summertime. Is that, Mr. Henry, what it covers?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the question.
Does it cover the summer hours? Is that?
Well, it covers the summer, it covers the summer hours as well as continuing into the fall.
Okay, okay.
So,
Why would we wait? Why could it not be any questions the commissioners have on this committee and then presented in the next, this month or this meeting or the next meeting? Could it be ready for the next meeting?
Yes, we can certainly make it available for next meeting. My experience has always been, if you try to push something like this too fast, it just doesn't allow sufficient time for folks to ask the questions. So that's kind of why I'm being very deliberate about it.
Okay, I want us to have that time and for the other commissioners, when it comes out, a week before it comes out or two, that they can ask questions if they'd like to.
Precisely, yes, concur.
Okay. Do you all have any questions about it?
Commissioner Scott, I have a question. This is more for Doug James.
yes,
Doug, I'm still not understanding something here. We took 411,000 or something to offset our pension from the OPEB, and we took that from the millage because it was directly related to law enforcement. Why would we not take this 50,000 from that?
we certainly could.
What is that money sitting there for? I don't want it to be, it seems to me that we should be able to take that 50,000 right out of that because that's what the voters voted that in for the law enforcement millage.
Oh, when you asked that question about if it was coming from there, that was your point.
Right.
Yes.
Why can't it come from there? If I believe correctly, from our last figures, there's over $200,000 in there.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's my big question. Why can't it come from there? Why does it have to come out of contingency? We can worry about contingency later. We should use up funding in the areas that we have it already designated for that. And then contingency maybe later on in the year. Just my thoughts.
It's a very, very valid question. I considered both sides of it. I really wasn't too crazy about reducing the millage fund balance any lower than we've taken it now, in case there were some other things that needed to happen. But it could be done, and we may have to backfill that at a later point.
I don't know. I'm just asking the question because, you know, it's not, to me, it's just as important as what pot the money comes out of, to me. And if it's already set aside for law enforcement millage, then this is a law enforcement issue. And I think we need to consider that. Just my opinion. That's all.
So when they do their analysis for our next meeting, then they can kind of sort out which bucket of money to take it from? Are you thinking, Mr. James?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else you'd like to discuss with us?
So maybe I had just one other thing here with a board appointment. You and I had a conversation about this last week. We have a board member that you have appointed to one of the boards who's had more than the 3 meetings in a row that this individual has missed. I did confirm that with the director. I had spoken to this individual prior to this at the end of last year, and the individual had been ill and had thought that she was doing better and was going to be able to make these meetings, but since has missed 3 meetings again. They've already had their meeting for June. Their next one wouldn't be until the end of July, but as per your policy, I'm bringing that before you to see where you would like to kind of go with that. If you'd like me to reach out to the individual again and you know, see if this is remedied, or if you might be ready to take some kind of action.
And it's for us as the parent, and have the people that, the committee that she's on, have they said anything more to her or ask her if she should be doing this still?
She was, in my last conversation with her, she was gonna reach out to her board, but I don't believe that they had that conversation with her. We did get, Mike and I were copied on, or were sent an email from the director of the organization, and she just, you know, stated on there that, you know, she had missed the, you know, the 3 in a row there. They did not have a March, April, or a May meeting because of COVID, so it was those were all canceled. But this would have been, you know, prior to that, and then now again at the last meeting it was just held.
Do you have any thought about it, Mr. Henry?
Well, I would suggest that the director meet with the finance committee and just talk about it. And, you know, this is the individual in question has been a long-serving member of that operation, long-serving member of the Benton Harbor community. So I think it's important to get the feedback from the director to understand where the organization really wants to go.
And that we do this as best we can.
That's correct. It's difficult with this Zoom business, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not ready yet to say you're no longer there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Very
No,
good.
I'm not sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was all I had for you guys.
We need to pass, did we do the minutes? We passed them already?
You passed the minutes, and actually I've reached out several times on YouTube for public comments, and I don't believe we have any public comments.
All right. Anything else, commissioners? Then this meeting is adjourned and we go to the next one. Thank you. This was a good day. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you, Annette. And thank you, Administrator Henry.
Thank you.